Finally, it appears we may be getting something in the WNBA that some of us have been longing and calling for. We know the referees were an absolute joke in this league. They were awful. They didn't call any fouls. You had people getting their nose busted open, blood all over the floor with no whistles being blown. We watched Caitlin Clark get the living life beat out of her every game, being targeted and not getting any foul calls. The girl can't get to the free throw line to save her life because they refuse to call fouls for her. And it appears, shout out to Rachel Demita. She had Annie Costable on. I recommend all of you go watch this interview at full length. Annie Costable addressed that the players and the WNBA is looking to bring in new referees, more qualified referees.
The WNBA just revealed they're bringing in fresh referees after 2 years of watching Caitlin Clark get completely wrecked on the court without a single whistle. Blood on the hardwood, busted noses, and the league's top star unable to draw a foul to save herself. Now, out of nowhere, they've decided maybe hiring competent officials is a smart move. Annie Costabile shared this update on Rachel Dita's show, and it's about time someone called out the total chaos that's been masquerading as officiating in this league. Before we dive deeper, drop a comment and let me know. Do you think the WNBA only cares about fixing the refs now because Caitlin Clark brought millions of new fans who actually noticed the disaster?
What do you think is the biggest thing just as far as the product on the floor? Because a lot of people talk about physicality. A lot of people talk about the referees. I actually did a deep dive in one of my episodes talking about like who the referees are calling to, essentially, and where the W gets their referees. But as far as the product, because at the end of the day, fans are not going to stick around if it's not a good product, period.
Right.
Like, they have to be there for the basketball, and I think a lot of casual fans got pulled into the W because Caitlin had such a different game that was, like, just very, very exciting to watch, and she's an incredible player. So they're there. Now they're seeing this product. They're like, oh, this is cool. There's other players that I'm like getting super invested in. But a lot of people have called out like physicality, referees. Have you heard anything from players, owners, like any of your sources about them actively working on improving the product?
Let's get straight to it. WNBA officiating has been an utter embarrassment for years. This isn't a sudden problem that arrived with Caitlin Clark. Rewind to Candace Parker's rookie campaigns or Diana Taurasi's early seasons. Elite players entering the league have always been physically dominated, while referees stood frozen, whistles untouched. Here's the harsh truth. Nobody cared back then because the audience wasn't watching. The league could have chaotic, borderline criminal officiating, and it went unnoticed. Then Caitlin Clark arrives, draws millions of new fans, and suddenly the world is witnessing women's basketball at a new level. People asking, why is she being flattened with zero calls?
The product?
Yeah, I mean, officiating, like, I know everyone thinks like this is all about Caitlin and the way Caitlin is officiated across the league. Coaches, like, this has been an issue. Like, go back.
We saw Coach Cheryl Reeve crash out.
Cheryl Reeve is the crash out queen.
Over the officiating. Yeah, it was like one of the best crash outs ever.
But, like, go back to, God, like Candace's rookie year. There's a game she gets laid out, like, and multiple. Like, go back to all of these players. It's crazy what they all went through. And so obviously there are more eyes on the league. So there's the way that the physicality around Caitlin was obviously layered in the sense of like, she's this phenom coming into the league. Like, everyone's talking about her. So we've got all these vets who, again, it's the same when Candace came into the league, when Diana, when there's a generational player that comes into the league, and it's in men's sports too, the messaging is, okay, this is our league, like, welcome, you know? It's like, and so I think across the league.
Annie Costabile appeared on Rachel Dita's Courtside Club show and confirmed what everyone already suspected. There's now a committee reviewing the league's officiating, and they're seriously considering bringing in more capable referees. She made it clear this has been a league-wide problem for years, not just with Caitlin Clark, but also acknowledged that the intense spotlight on the WNBA, fueled by Clark's popularity, is finally forcing the league to take real action.
there are coaches, like this has been an issue. And in that respect, I think the attention on the league now is forcing the league's hand, because all these years that they've been like, yeah, we're doing enough. Like, again, we've been asking in press conferences for years, like, what's up with this thing, right? And so now, again, the microscope is so fixated on the league that they have to answer these questions and they have to do better. And so, yes, the officiating has been a problem. It was a problem. It will continue to be a problem until they treat the hiring of these officials as, again, the same way they treat the players in terms of making this like a lucrative place to be. You can't expect the best officiating if the salary structure is not great, if the way you're pooling these officials is like not great. There's so many institutional issues and have been with the officiating. There's a committee now that has been put together. The competition meetings, they spoke about the officiating committee. That's something that I've got to double back on and see how much.
It's almost comical when you step back and think about it. The league has known the refereeing was disastrous for over a decade. Players have been vocal. Coaches have faced ejections for calling out sloppy officiating. Cheryl Reeve famously erupted over a blown call. Yet the WNBA kept insisting, we're handling it, while the problem raged on. Now that casual fans are tuning in and raising questions, suddenly it's urgent. Let's break down what actually happened during Caitlin Clark's rookie season. It was absolutely wild. She was getting shoved, grabbed, and physically dominated on nearly every possession. Defenders were playing like it was the NFL, and the officials turned a blind eye. No matter what happened, she couldn't draw a free throw.
This is a simple call to make. Where are we going so wrong?
Yeah, where's the disconnect?
Right. And it brings me back to that game against the Fever and the Sun. And again, the fact that there was, even within that game, there was no consistency with the calls. And like Marina checking Caitlin to the floor, like we can laugh, like Marina is a crash out queen, and I have the utmost respect for Marina, and I've covered her. I think her style, like her aggressiveness, I love that, because that's kind of like how I am in my real life. I'm a very like aggressive person, but like to not call these things appropriately, she should have been kicked. Like that should have been, and that should have been the end of it.
The Kennedy Carter incident perfectly illustrates the problem. Carter lowered her shoulder and slammed Clark to the floor when the ball wasn't even in play. That should have been an immediate flagrant foul and possibly an ejection. Instead, the referees called nothing in the moment. It only got upgraded to a flagrant after the league office reviewed it. That's not how officiating is supposed to function. Another example, Marina Ma leveling Caitlin in the Sun versus Fever game. Annie Costabile said it herself on the show. Marina should have been ejected. It wasn't a basketball move. It was a cheap shot. Yet the refs let it slide, and the game went on as if nothing happened. What made it worse was the inconsistency. In the same game, minor fouls would be whistled on one end, while obvious dirty hits were ignored on the other. There was no pattern, no logic to what counted as a foul. That creates real danger because players can't gauge what's allowed. Rachel Dita made an excellent point about landing space fouls. They must be called every single time, because ignoring them risks serious injuries. A player landing into another's space can tear an ankle, a knee, or worse. Yet WNBA referees routinely missed these critical calls. Alyssa Thomas took out Nysa Collier's ankle chasing a steal in the playoffs, and the referee called it clean because she touched the ball. But according to the official rule book, if you can't get the ball without making harmful contact, it's a foul. Even NBA refs reviewing the play admitted it was legal, but that's wrong under the written rules. Mistakes like this happen because WNBA officials aren't properly trained on their own regulations. Annie Costabile highlighted the league's referee pay structure and how it directly impacts officiating quality. If you don't compensate officials well and make the role desirable, you won't attract top talent. You'll get whoever accepts the low pay. That produces a pool of refs who may lack the training or experience required for this level. For years, the WNBA has been running on a tight budget, cutting corners wherever possible. Officiating was one of those corners. They hired officials who might not have been qualified for this caliber, but were willing to work for less. The result? The on-court product suffered. Now, with Caitlin Clark bringing a flood of new fans, people are watching and asking, wait, is this normal? They're comparing WNBA action to NBA and college games, and the difference is glaring. The inconsistency, the missed calls, the total lack of player protection, it all becomes glaring when millions of casual fans are watching. Now, the WNBA is finally being forced to act. They can't hide behind, "We're doing enough," when their star is being targeted every game and referees are letting it slide. The league needs Caitlin Clark healthy and on the court because she's driving ratings and attendance. If she gets hurt due to unprotected calls, the financial fallout would be massive. What's frustrating is this is all reactionary, not proactive. The WNBA should have addressed officiating years ago when players and coaches raised these issues. Instead, they waited until it became a PR nightmare and are now scrambling to make changes. Annie mentioned there's now an officiating committee formed during the competition meetings, but she noted she still needs to check if any real progress has been made. Committees often form and accomplish very little. That's the WNBA in a nutshell. Lots of talk about improvement, minimal action. The physicality debate is also compelling, with differing viewpoints. Annie emphasized she doesn't want the women's game to be softened, and she's right. The game will always be more physical than the men's because women compete on the floor rather than above the rim. You can't slam into someone going for a dunk without risking serious injury. That's why the NBA has natural limits on physicality that don't exist in the WNBA. But Rachel pointed out that Adam Silver protects his stars in the NBA because he knows they need to stay on the court. Top players get a different whistle, and that's accepted. They drive ratings and revenue. The WNBA hasn't reached that level yet. Defenders can maul their biggest stars, and casual fans wonder why they get turned off. A'ja Wilson gets some protection because she's earned it over her career and has adapted her game to draw calls. But Caitlin Clark, as a rookie, was getting hammered while refs swallowed their whistles. That's disastrous for league growth because the player attracting new fans is being targeted with no protection. Consistency is a massive issue. Annie admitted she feels for referees. They have one of the hardest jobs on the court. That's fair, but the WNBA's problems go beyond judgment calls. It's basic rules like landing space fouls or off-ball hits. These should be automatic every time. When simple things are missed, credibility evaporates. Players don't trust the refs, coaches don't trust the refs, and fans at home are left confused about what counts as a foul. That creates a terrible viewing experience and makes the league look completely unprofessional. What Annie highlighted about the discussion surrounding Caitlin Clark is crucial. When clear fouls weren't being called on plays involving Clark, media figures who rarely covered the WNBA jumped in and framed it as poor Caitlin being bullied by veteran players. That narrative made honest conversations about officiating much harder. Point out a missed call, and suddenly you're accused of being in the protect Caitlin camp. But this wasn't about defending one player. It was about enforcing fouls that should be called for anyone. Kennedy Carter lowering her shoulder into a player when the ball isn't in play should be a foul, whether it's Clark or anyone else. The issue is that the WNBA let this spiral for so long that when attention finally arrived, the debate became centered on a single star instead of systemic officiating failures. That tribal mentality made reform harder, with people picking sides instead of agreeing that refs need to be competent across the board. The newly formed committee is a positive step, if they actually take action. But Annie's doubt about meaningful change is warranted, given the league's history. They talk about improving officiating constantly, but follow-through is another story. The solution is straightforward. Pay referees properly so the league can attract qualified, capable officials. Invest in proper training so referees fully understand the rules and can enforce them consistently. Establish accountability so officials who repeatedly miss calls face real consequences. And protect star players. They're the ones driving attention and growth in the league. That last point may spark debate because people dislike the idea of giving stars preferential treatment, but it's the reality in every professional sport. The players who sell tickets and jerseys are protected. That's how leagues grow and sustain themselves financially. The WNBA has been slow to embrace this, but it can't afford to ignore it any longer. Caitlin Clark is far too valuable to the league's expansion to let defenders take liberties without repercussions. If she suffers a serious injury because fouls aren't being called, it could set the WNBA back years in mainstream visibility. The same applies to any other marquee players who serve as the faces of the league. You have to safeguard your investments. The fact that it took a massive surge of new fans for the league to finally take officiating seriously is embarrassing, but at least action is being taken. Better late than never, though countless players who endured abuse over the years would strongly disagree.